I've been using lots of these sparkly threads recently in my projects. They were a gift from one of my lovely viewers. And this is all part of my reflections on the trip that I took last summer. Well, I'm not in the English countryside anymore. There was definitely lots of sparkly inspiration during this part of the trip. Any guesses where I am now? I'm actually not that far away from the English countryside, as it turns out. This incredible building is in a place called Wembley. Perhaps you've heard of the stadium there. It's just outside London, not too far away from where I was staying in Hanwell. I was there for another workshop. This one was on Islamic Geometric Design, which is made using just the simplest tools, a pencil, a ruler, and a compass. And it's pretty amazing to me that the most incredible repeating patterns emerge from those simple tools. I'm just so intrigued with how these patterns are made. And I had actually planned my entire trip around taking this workshop. I was just thrilled to be there. Now, usually the drawings are just the first step in the process, and the patterns are used to create architectural elements in tiles and wood and sometimes in metal. I don't think it's at all common to recreate the patterns in cloth, but when I saw the pattern for the workshop, I could see that it had an underlying grid of squares with other shapes superimposed on top of those. I could see right away how I could make it with pieces of cloth. And I've used many different stitches in this piece. I've used different kinds of applique and quite a few different embroidery stitches. And what I'm doing right now is I am outlining some of the shapes that I have with these green sparkly threads, and I'm using something that's called couching. Now, if you watched my previous video where I showed you how I use these sparkly threads to create a spider web, you may have noticed that I had a bit of a struggle sewing these bulky, rough threads through the cloth. Couching stitch is perfect for a really thick or difficult thread to work with. The way I'm using it is I'm laying the sparkly thread just on the surface of the cloth, and you don't have to sew it in and out. And then you use a second fine thread that's easy to sew through the cloth, and you just use that to tack down the uncooperative thread on the top layer, so it doesn't actually go through to the back of the cloth at all. It's great for outlining shapes like I'm doing here, but I've also used this stitch in other ways. Another place that I visited in this area is called Southall. This is a very colorful area, and it might not be the first place that you think of visiting when you go to the UK, but I remember when I was a little girl, we used to come here on the weekends to visit the market here, and I'm sure that my younger self that felt rather ripped off that I didn't get to wear a long dress in our play here would have just loved all these blingy, sparkly things, and yes, a few of them did come home with me, and I used them in this piece that I'm calling Parvy, after one of the deities in the Hindu pantheon. And I had already made this piece some time ago. I'm calling her Kali because Kali is often depicted with messy black hair. And you might notice that she has 4 arms, and that's because many Hindu gods and goddesses are depicted with 4 arms. So I'm also going to give Parvati 4 arms. So I've started off with my thread here that I've secured in the back, and you'll notice that I don't even have to cut it off the spool there. I can just start sewing with it, and I'm also doing this using couching stitch, just stitching down around the outline that I've drawn on my cloth. I often don't draw outlines like this, but I thought that it would be helpful this time, so I did it. And after I've gone all the way around the outside edge, I'm going to continue on and fill in the rest of the shape just like I did with her face, just by going round and around and around, continuing to stitch down the sparkly thread. And then when I get to the end, I will cut off my thread so I don't waste anything, pull that sparkly thread through to the back and then tie it off, and that's it. Most of the sparkly thread sits on the surface, and you can see that there's very little of it showing on the back here. And now Parvati here has one limb, and here's how Parvati looks with the rest of her limbs, and she's going to live here on this part of my piece. And I hope you've liked this video, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.